Pentacle is, the pentagram is a device drawn in the air to manipulate energy during ritual, alright? Drawn either with the 3 fingers representing an athame or with your athame. The pentacle is a 5-pointed star encompassed with a circle. And that circle encompassing the 5-pointed star is the creative force of God. Within the pentagram, we have active elements and passive elements. Passive spirit is the word agala, A-G-L-A. The active spirit is aheye. So we have passive, feminine spirit, the creative force, the creative spirit being agala, and the destructive masculine spirit being aheye. The pentagram is representative of the 5 elements. The proper way to describe the pentagram is spirit, water, fire, earth, air. And there's reason for that. We have, as I said, active elements being fire and air, and passive elements being water and earth. You saw me active, passive. So, the sarcophagi of the Egyptians, right? You slap a hexagram over that and trace the points. We have a hexagram, right? Okay, just keep that in mind. And then think about what the sarcophagi is holding, right? Thy rod and thy staff. So, again, the pentagram represents the 4 elements and spirit. Now, the pentacle, as I said, is encompassed by a circle. So the pentagram is representative of the square of creation, right? The 4 elements making a square that represents creation. Well, where's spirit? Spirit is hidden within the square of creation because we have 4 angles, 90 degrees, 360 degrees, correct? Okay, and you can look at it if you want as 2 angles being 90 and 90, 180, one person, a man, one being, 90 and 90, 180, another being, because a man is essentially a straight line, right? So 2 straight lines, male and female. We have spirit, 360 degrees, the number of a circle, perfection, infinity, right? Pi is an infinite number. It just never stops. So representing a circle. So the circle is what is representative of spirit, and it's hidden within the square of creation. So just know that Elohim we're circling the square. Okay, circling the square, meaning the pentagrams representing the square of creation, earth, air, fire, and water, and spirit. And we're circling the square with the creative force of God, bringing forth nature, bringing forth reality. Okay? So if we take the creative force of God, which is Elohim, and put it around the pentagram, we now have a pinnacle. We have the creative energies of nature, earth, air, fire, and water, and spirit, surrounded by the creative force of God, the pentacle, okay? The reason that we have a passive spirit and an active spirit being Aheye and Agala, and then we have Elohim being the creative force of God, is because we have Elohim, okay? So Elo is the feminine connotation for God, all right? Elohim is masculine for God, all right? So we have Him is masculine, Elo is feminine. Elohim, because of Kabbalistic past tense and future tense, the past, what comes before, think again of the womb. We all start out as females in the womb, correct? So what comes before is feminine and passive. What comes after is masculine and transmissive. So henceforth, the Christian God being referred to as He, even though it's technically a feminine noun, because we begin with Elo, feminine, but because what comes after is transmissive and what comes after is masculine, then Elohim is referred to in a masculine form, okay? Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Destructive forces, the left creative forces. the way the pentagram is constructed for ritual, we have the invoking pentagram and the banishing pentagram. The invoking pentagram starts at the upper apex and goes down towards the point of Earth. So to the lower left, and then continues creating the star. The banishing pentagram, just traditional banishing pentagram, opposes that. Okay, so it opposes your invoking stroke. So the fact that we have 2 active elements and 2 passive elements. Alright? When you set up the pentagram, traditionally the correct way to set up the pentagram is spirit, water, fire, earth, air. And the reason being is because we have active elements on this diagonal, passive elements on this diagonal. Within the active elements, they're represented by upright triangles, being a phallic symbol. Think of a police officer's uniform or a military uniform. The more upward pointing angles that you have, triangles, the higher your ranking, right? So a phallic symbol representing masculinity, destructive energy, active energy, and an inverted triangle representing the womb, okay? Representing creative energy. The womb's where creation takes place, right? Within the active elements, we have 2 active elements, fire and air. There's 1 active element and 1 passive active element. Air being the passive active element and fire being the active element. Fire represented by an upright triangle, empty, and air an upright triangle containing a line in the triangle. The inverted triangle, empty, is water, and the inverted triangle containing a line is earth. So earth is passive, and water is active, passive. So again, we have one within the other and the other within the one. So God is one. Right? That's an important thing to take away from this, that yin and yang, okay? One is within everything, and everything is within one, and that is all within man. You take the square of the elements of creation, and the center of the square representing spirit, the space within, okay? So we have spirit hidden, and with numerology, typically you drop the 0, and if we take the numbers 1 through 36 and add them up, we end up with 666. So we also have the destructive nature of God shown and hidden within the square of creation. 3 rules that apply to constructing the pentagram during ritual is that your first stroke is your defining stroke of the pentagram. So the first stroke of the pentagram of fire, for example, will move towards the element of fire, where it's traditionally located at on a traditional pentagram. So remember, I said the order is important: water, fire, earth, air. So the invoking pentagram of fire moves from our top and down towards the element of fire. The second rule is that the banishing pentagram opposes the first definitive stroke of your invocative pentagram. So our banishing pentagram of fire begins at the point of fire and moves away and continues to make the star that way. The third rule being that both active elements, fire and air, are drawn, invocative is drawn clockwise and banishing is drawn widdershins. Now it's the other way around, sort of counterintuitive with the passive elements. We have a banishing pentagram drawn in a clockwise direction with the passive elements. The pentagram of earth is drawn, we start at the upper apex, the same as our traditional invoking pentagram, and we move towards the element of earth. The banishing pentagram of earth moves away from the element of earth, opposing that first definitive stroke of our invoking pentagram. The invoking pentagram of water moves towards the element of water, so we begin and move towards the element of water and create the star in that fashion. The banishing pentagram of water and goes away from the element of water, traditionally set up on our pentagram. Lastly, the element of air, we begin moving towards the element of air in a clockwise direction. Banishing Pentagram of air opposes that first definitive stroke. So first stroke moves towards air, banishing moves away from, and it's counterclockwise. Banishing pentagram of earth, air, fire, and water. And our invoking pentagrams of earth, air, fire, and water. According to the traditional setup of the pentagram, which is spirit, water, fire, earth, air. It's important to remember that. Active, passive. Destructive, creative. Masculine, feminine. We've touched on the square of creation being encircled by Elohim, so we circle the square with the creative force of God. Now, why am I discussing the symbol that represents each of the elements? Well, I'm doing so because when we layer those symbols on top of each other, each one of those triangles, we create the hexagram. If the symbols create the hexagram, the symbols at each point of the pentagram create the hexagram. Even spirit, because spirit is the 360-degree circle, and the center of the hexagram is equivalent to 360 degrees. With the traditional hexagram of high magic that we typically see the picture of, and going in a clockwise direction around the hexagram, we have Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, the moon opposing Saturn, Mercury, and Mars. Okay? So, and in the center of the hexagram is representative of the sun. So why isn't the sun at the top and Saturn in the center? Well, okay, why does Saturn oppose the moon? Because we have opposition creates definition, right? Right. So the reason Saturn opposes the moon is because in ancient times, these are the 7 celestial bodies that could be viewed with the naked eye in ancient times. And Saturn was much closer, as we now know through science that the universe is constantly expanding. Back in those times, you could see Saturn in the sky as another sun. And that's what it was viewed as, was another sun. The destructive forces of Saturn, the creative forces of feminism. Okay, so as above, so below. That's what the hexagram is representative of. Microcosm and macrocosm. Okay, so as within, so without. So think of macrocosm as the cosmos, the celestial bodies in the heavens. Okay, and then think of microcosm, looking at an atom. It looks like a bunch of planets revolving around a sun, right? So microcosm and macrocosm, that can be shown by the microcosm, macrocosm man, where you trace the points of the body. I want to move on a little bit. I don't really want to touch on tetragrammaton in this video because that gets a little deeper than where I want to go with this. But the important thing to note with tetragrammaton and the hexagram is the way that it's inserted into the hexagram. We have tetragrammaton, and then pi at the bottom triangle. So that zigzag shape, okay, tetragrammaton, and then down, and then if we trace it back up, okay? Just remember that zigzag. That's how tetragrammaton is inserted into the hexagram. You'll understand here in a second where I'm going with that, all right? Now, the hexagram, what's interesting is the hexagram and the pentagram together are the seal of Saturn, okay? The pentagram being the front and the hexagram being on the back of the seal of Saturn. With the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, you have the parishioners' robes, the front having the pentagram, the back having the hexagram. Okay, so it's the seal of Saturn. And that's the second reason for placing the pentagram together with the hexagram in this video. What's interesting to note, one, before we move on, we have Alpha and Omega also represented with a traditional picture of the hexagram. Okay, so Alpha, the left, the beginning, darkness. Well, what? Creation, Alpha, the beginning, darkness? Yes, everything began with darkness, right? Even in the Bible, and even in the Pulmonadries from the Hermetica, it says, the earth was shapeless and void of light. It says that. We have creation coming from the darkness, feminine, and omega, the light, the right side, the God, the end, all right, masculine, omega. So we have alpha and omega also being represented by the hexagram. So the beginning and the end, as above, so below, as within, so without. Like I said, the atom and the cosmos. But what's interesting about the hexagram is that the center of the hexagram, just like the pentagram, is the same shape as what you would have if you connected the outer points, which is a hexagon. And this is the seal of Saturn, remember. On top of Saturn, and I think it was the 80s, they discovered with the telescope that went into space a perfect hexagon right on top of Saturn. And swirling around is this huge, gigantic storm. Many Earths will fit inside that storm. It's massive. We can create a cube from the hexagon, okay? And why does that matter? What, a cube? What? Okay, well, if we take a hexagram, which has 6 points, right? And we place it within a cube, and we connect the points in a three-dimensional fashion, we end up with something called the Merkabah. It's 3 hieroglyphs, or 3 words, meaning the spirit vehicle. So what is the spirit vehicle? To put it very simply, man is the spirit vehicle. Okay, the body is the vehicle through which the spirit can transcend realms. Saturn's number, awkwardly, is, well, rather not awkwardly, actually, is 666. How do I come up with that? Why is this all important? The cube, 666, the hexagon, the hexagram. Where are you going with this? You'll see. 666 is represented in so many different ways in relation to Saturn. We have Saturn. How many letters are in the word? 6. Saturn's day is Saturday, the 6th day of the week, right? We have the center of the hexagon is created from 6 equilateral triangles, all containing 60-degree angles. We have 360 degrees creating the center of the hexagram, right? And the outside surrounding the hexagram, 360 degrees. Again, the hexagram, Saturn, we have 360 degrees, a number of perfection, the circle within it. So again, we have God within the destruction, and just like we had the destruction within God. If we take, like I said, 360 degrees, mark the 0 off, add up 1 through 36, we get 666. So we have 60-degree angles, 6 of those 60-degree angles, 6 points of the hexagram, 6 letters in Saturn, all these 6s, 666. Why is that important at all in relation to God and Satan contained within man? That we are God and we are the energy that is defined as Satan's and Saturn, Cronus. 666 is carbon. 6 neutrons, 6 protons, and 6 electrons. 2 electrons surrounding the nucleus, 4 in the valence shell. So we have 666. Now, what's really interesting is that if you take a 2D drawing of the carbon atom with the atoms in the way that they orbit the center of the atom, okay, you slap a hexagram on top of that, that's exactly what it is, right? It's undeniable. It just is. And if you want to talk about the unicursal hexagram, it's even more perfect because you don't have to lift the pencil to draw it, which I'm not going to discuss in depth the unicursal hexagram in this video. It's the construction of the hexagram for ritual, and then you get into the unicursal hexagram. It gets really, really deep. Just as an example, okay, the invoking hexagram of the sun is the invoking hexagrams for earth, air, fire, and water all combined in the order that I gave earlier: water, fire, earth, air. We have all 4 of those hexagrams drawn to create the invoking hexagram for one planet. Okay, and each planet has an invoking and a banishing hexagram for every element. So it gets really complex. One good thing about the hexagram and the construction of it is that it does follow by the rule that all invoking hexagrams are clockwise and all banishing hexagrams are drawn counterclockwise. The traditional hexagram we know, an upright and an inverted triangle representing as above, so below, each element has a different depiction of that, of those two triangles. So the fire hexagram is two overlapped upright triangles. Earth, air, fire, and water hexagrams are different. So when I say that you're drawing each one of the invoking hexagrams for the elements to create the invoking hexagram of sun, that's pretty deep. So we're 666 carbon, and if you take carbon and turn it into a three-dimensional image, you have the Merkabah. Okay, so 666 is the number of man, because carbon is what makes us up. We're made of carbon. So 666 is the number of man. And ironically, or rather not, it's the number of Saturn. Okay? So what does that mean? What does all this mean? Let's go a little bit deeper. All right? If we take a hexagram and we place another hexagram on top of it so that the points of the second hexagram go between the points of the first, we end up with 12 points, okay? The 12 signs of the zodiac. Man, humanity, okay? Created by two hexagrams. Masculine, feminine, two hexagrams, male and female, create the 12 signs of the zodiac, giving us humanity, giving us, all right? 666, carbon, making us. With those two interlaced hexagrams, if we do what I said and draw the zigzag from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 is down to pi. Pi is represented in the bottom triangle. Again, 3.14. Okay, it's infinite. It's never ending. Just like God, it's never ending. All right. So we take that zigzag and we go back up the zigzag. Because we have two hexagrams, we trace the other one, and what do we get? You get a double helix. That's intense. Now what's even more intense there is that not only do we get a double helix, but DNA is made up of 4 proteins. We have 4 elements of creation, earth, air, fire, and water, and 4 proteins that make up the double helix. We also have Kundalini that looks like the zigzag connecting the points of the hexagram, okay? So what I'm saying here, the whole point of this is that God is within man, Saturn or Satan or Cronus is within man. If you want to take it another step, we know that Cronus ate his children, right? Because he was afraid that they were going to overthrow him, which Zeus did overthrow him. And Rhea fed Cronus a rock. She fed Cronus a rock. He thought it was Zeus. Zeus grew up, raised by nymphs in the cave somewhere in Greece or wherever. And when he grew up, he went to Mount Olympus to destroy Cronus. And from the ashes of Cronus, man is said to be created. Our era of man. Okay? And Cronus is the god of time. Saturn controls time. We're bound by time, right? So, again, we're bound by Saturn, by Cronus, by the god of time, because we're made from the ashes of Cronus, if you follow that mythology. So there's just another example of the energy of Saturn, Cronus, Set, Satan being within us, okay? So, everything is within us, God and Satan. And I did start my practice as a Wiccan, okay? But I am no longer. I do not associate myself with the religion of Wicca. Because the religion that I follow is sort of an eclectic religion of my own. I believe deeply in the tenets of the Hermetica. And from the Bible, if we read it as a parable, how it should be taken as a parable, discussing energies and discussing the cosmos, and not take it as a written accounting of history, because it's not, then we understand that the Bible can be used in a mystical manner. That if we just forget about the fact that Satan is a Christian concept and think about the energy before Satan, it was Saturn. Okay, and there was Moloch at one point, the bull god that they sacrificed babies to. Right, that's not a good thing. That's a very destructive thing, right? But they were doing it in order to bring the fertility to the earth and to please the god, I guess. But using destructive forces to sort of egg on creative forces, if you will. There's many ways to look at it, but the main point of this whole video is that God exists within Saturn, or Satan, Set, and Satan, Set, Saturn exists within God. They're both the same being. Darkness within light, light within darkness, yin and yang. And humanity, human consciousness, is the platform upon which all of that exists. This is part one of magical stars, because there's many magical stars. You have the heptagram and the septagram. There's just a bunch of them, all right? And they all represent different things. This will be a good series. This is part one of the magical star series. So hit that like button, subscribe, and blessings.